It doesn't have any sort of weird, tricky gimmicks, and it doesn't sort of pull off any sort of crazy stunts with its camera angles and nothing like that. But it does show experience and solidness in its composition. It essentially tells a conversation. It tells a story of the battle through how the battle is shown.
I stand by my comments on my live reaction for Overlord Episode 4. I still think that Ainz' battles are, without a doubt, some of the most precise classical elements of filmmaking. In fact, while they aren't that spectacular, they are very consistent with the rules they lay out. And when you look at the fights compared to each other, you start to see a dialogue emerge. Overlord's protagonist, Ainz Ol Gun, has 3 major fights. Of the 3, the first 2 are an interesting case study in the precision of Overlord's editing. The first is in episode 4 against the captain of the Sunlight Scripture of Slane's Theocracy, Nagun. The second is in episode 9 against the rogue warrior Clementine. On the surface level, we can see that these fights are the complete polar opposites of each other. In Nagun's fight, Ainz is defending a town after having already rescued Gazov. In Clementine's fight, Ainz is going to rescue Neferia. Accompanying him against Nagun is Albedo, a physical who remains with him. Accompanying him against Clementine is Narbarel, a caster who separates from him to fight Khajit. The fight against Nagun happens during daytime. The fight against Clementine happens at night. Nagun fights at long range. Clementine fights at close range. Nagun's loss is primarily a Dutch angle with a close-up shot. Clementine's is a predominantly flat angle with parallax. Nagun's fight is unbroken. Clementine's has parallel action between her and Khajit. In many instances, Clementine's fight is the opposite of Nagun's, and the visuals of the fight represent that. In fact, it's pretty logical to think that, but Overlord does something a little bit different. And it's really hard to say what it is without showing it. So, in fact, I think the best way is actually to show it. If you take the fights between Ainz and Nagun and the fight between Ainz and Clementine, edit out the parts between Narbarel and Khajit, you'll have 2 fights side by side. With a standard deviation of around 10 or so seconds from the beginning of the fight to the end, you'll have almost exactly 8 minutes per fight. When you put it side to side, something emerges. Both fights begin with Ainz' swaying cloth. Both fights situate Ainz on the left side, facing right, refusing to break the axis. In fact, Ainz will rarely give up his screen presence to the other fighter. If he's not shown as encompassing most of the screen, he's either close up to take up more real estate or at a low angle to show his dominance. Both fights begin with a face-off, almost as if the battle for control of the frame is the same as battle for space in the narrative itself. Both fights begin to climax at the same time, 6 minutes and 3 seconds. For Nagun, that's where the trump card proved to be a failure. For Clementine, that's when she realizes she can't escape. At 6 minutes and 35 seconds, we have a visual cue that the fight is going to reach its crescendo, the eyes. Ainz' eyes glow red, and against Nagun, he one-shots the summon. Against Clementine, his arm clenches around her. And from there, there's nothing left. It's over. While the fight seems like it's complete opposites, on a baser, simpler level, they're the same fight. They have the same beginning, middle, and end, with many of the scenes matching up almost perfectly together. In short, Ainz' first 2 fights share an incredibly similar rhythm. Though their circumstances and elements are different, they build in the same way, they follow the same general technical guidelines, and they employ the same visual cues to mark positions in the fight's narrative. If that's the case, then the question now becomes, why? Why are the fights dressed up so differently, but are fundamentally so similar? And I think the answer is quite simple. To Ainz, they aren't fights. Fights are ultimately non-verbal dialogues communicated through bodies and movement instead of words. They're a central enthralling element to character and plot development that teaches the fighters to learn something new, and the similarities suggest that there's no real exchange. Like clockwork, he'll end the fight in the same basic way, in the same basic time, with the same basic result. It's saying that no matter how much these enemies struggle, no matter how different or unique they are or believe they are, at the end of the day, Ainz's immensely asymmetrical power is the only thing that dictates the flow and structure of the fight, not them. To Ainz, these aren't fights, as they're so much the parroting of villainous cliches, providing little substance and usefulness to him as a character. He isn't learning anything, and the show sympathizes with him by showing the audience a fight that seems very different, but feels very familiar. This brings us to Ainz's third fight, against Shaltir. Now use the pattern in the first two fights, and think about it. Can you see the same general rule? The same hugging to the left, the red eyes, the clear narrative structure? It's unlikely you will. The fight is very different, even on a basic level. Shaltir's strength is something else from the previous two. It's much longer, the cues are completely different, and this time, it's her on the left. She's on another level, and through that exchange in space and action, we have, for the first time for Ainz Al Ghun, non-verbal dialogue.